Today, we're talking about one of the most debated topics in CrossFit, the keto diet. Is it actually a good idea for performance-driven athletes where you want to be strong, explosive? Can you be on keto? Or is this best left for fat loss phases and non-athletes? Tune in and take notes as we break it down.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
Guys, as a CrossFit coach, I find myself talking to people about diet often, and that's a good thing because it is basically impossible to out-exercise a bad diet. And in fact, in our CrossFit world, we have our pyramid of priority, and the base of that pyramid is healthy eating. It's nutrition. It's how you feel your body. And it's so important to get this right if you want to go out and live your best life. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it is mission critical. It's impossible to live your best life if you don't have an intelligent nutrition base upon which to put the beautiful architecture of your fitness world. You need it. And as we go into this conversation about keto specifically, which is going to be fairly high level, fairly introductory, but I will get into some of the science of it because I am a nerd about that sort of thing. I find it interesting. But as we get into this, I want to preface this by saying that if you don't have any structured diet plan right now at all, which if you say things like, well, if I ask you, like, what's your diet like? And you say, well, I try to eat healthy. I try to do this. I try to do that. If those words spill out of your mouth in response to the question, what's your diet? Now, you don't have a diet plan. You don't have a structured diet plan. What you have is a daily aspiration to be a healthy person, and you are winging it from day to day. And if that's you, you shouldn't don't feel too convicted about that, because that is the standard American diet. The standard American diet is just winging it and believing that, well, everything in moderation, and as long as you occasionally say no to yourself when you want to say yes, it creates this completely false illusion in our heads that we have any sort of dietary structure whatsoever. And this complete falsity, this complete illusion is why the average person sees their health fall apart from week to week and month to month and year to year. And they're always gaining body fat. They're always becoming less fit because the standard American diet, which effectively is the absence of having a diet plan, is an absolute agent of destruction to your health. So I say all that to say that if you go from having no plan to having any sort of intelligently structured plan, you're probably going to see progress and positive changes. And that is also true if you're going from the no plan standard American diet to a keto diet. You'll probably see great progress. But if you already have an established, consistent eating routine that you know produces results for you, and you're considering keto as a level up, this is probably a podcast for you. So let's quickly define first what keto is. Just to be clear, keto is a very high fat, very low carb, moderate protein diet that is designed to shift your body into a state of ketosis where it burns fat for fuel instead of glucose. A typical breakdown in terms of macros, when we talk about macronutrients, we talk about protein, fat, and carb. A typical breakdown would be like 70 to 75% of dietary fat, of your intake would be dietary fat, 20 to 25% protein, and 5 to 10% carbs. For a lot of people, this would be less than 50 grams a day. And there's a lot of pros to it. I've seen this work fantastically well for some people. Some of the pros for CrossFit athletes I'll outline here now, and allow me to step onto my health and fitness geek soapbox for a second. You can see improved fat oxidation and energy stability. What I mean by that is once you are fat adapted and your body does use fat for fuel, you can rely more dependably on fat for fuel at lower to moderate intensities consistently. This can also help to reduce energy crashes, blood sugar swings, and hunger pangs during longer days, longer training sessions. For example, some athletes experience reduced inflammation, so they have less joint pain, less aches and pains in their joints when they're on a lower carb, anti-inflammatory diet. This is especially true if they're going to a keto diet from the absence of a diet. You could argue that many people on keto have better body composition. Sometimes it works well for some people. This can help certain athletes to lean out, to reduce water retention. Carbohydrates, hydrates do tend to produce holding more body water. And there is some evidence that ketosis or being on the keto diet can improve your insulin sensitivity because you're not seeing the same kinds of carbohydrate-related blood sugar spikes. I've also heard some fans of the keto diet talk about enhanced mental clarity. Some keto adapted athletes talk about improved focus and mood, which, jump term cognitive performance. As I drink my Fit Aid here, I would actually argue that this happens anytime you go from no diet to having a structured, intelligent diet plan. You see improved mental clarity across all diets that are at least reasonably intelligently designed. So if you're talking about like longer aerobic sessions or your steady pace workouts, fat as fuel can actually work really well once you're adapted. But let's talk about the cons of keto for CrossFit athletes. And this is a really important topic because so much of CrossFit is glycolytic, meaning we're burning glucose, blood sugar, we're burning carbohydrates for fuel. Where CrossFit is most of the time generally a high intensity performance sport or activity. And keto can impair explosive speed, power, sprint speed, heavy or max lifts. It can compromise WOD pace for shorter, more aggressive kinds of workouts, just because the nature that we pull carbohydrate energy first when we are doing intense efforts exercise-wise. And that's really important with CrossFit because so many of the workouts that we do are shorter and more intense. And so if you have reduced muscle glycogen because you're not consuming any carbohydrates, it can lead to faster fatigue during those short or intense workouts. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I try to capture it in a scientific but also accessible way. For some people too, the adaptation phase is pretty tough. I've heard about people getting the keto flu and having diarrhea, pooping their guts out. The keto flu is also sometimes characterized by brain fog, irritability, having low energy, poor sleep for the first 7 to 14 days. It's important to note that for most people that does pass, but the first couple of weeks can be kind of rough. That said, I think the first couple of weeks is rough for most diets, or even to be more specific, days like 8 to like 15 or 18 to 21 are often the toughest days on any diet, because at that point, the novelty of it, the newness has worn off. So the excitement is worn off, and your body actually sometimes is less energetic because your body has not yet learned to be super efficient at metabolizing a different set of inputs. The food that you're eating, your body has to learn to be metabolically efficient with that food. And sometimes that days like 8 to 15 or 18 to 21 is a very rocky road for people as their bodies adapt to using new fuel sources. So the adaptation phase can be tough. And for some people, it can be harder to build muscle. It's important to note that carbs do support anabolic hormones like insulin, and they replenish glycogen, which you do need for hypertrophy. So muscle gain can be tougher with chronically low insulin and depleted glycogen levels. And then some people argue that keto is difficult to maintain socially or practically when you're going out to be with friends. I would actually push back on that a little bit because most places that you go, you can get meats or a animal protein source. If you go to a Mexican restaurant, you can get plant-based protein sources, although those do tend to come with carbohydrates at a higher level. But as long as you're willing to be the person eating different from the others, which I am totally okay with, then you're eating out, your competitions, travel, it shouldn't be impossible, although it can be tough to stay high fat, low carb consistently. It can be tough. It doesn't have to be. So for a CrossFitter, if you're chasing, faster Fran times and PRs, keto might hold you back more than it helps or advances you. But let's ask the question, who would really benefit from keto? Just to clarify, let's put some subcategories, some sub niches, some groups out there that might benefit from this. First, masters athletes that are focused more on health span or joint health. If you're more focused on that than leaderboard placement, keto might be a good match for you. Athletes rehabbing from metabolic dysfunction, like if you've been pre-diabetic, if you've been in a highly inflamed state, keto can be a really good way of breaking the dependence on carbohydrates and the sugar rush and all of those negative things that tend to come from the standard American diet. If you tend to bias to aerobic or longer, slower training sessions, less short, intense sessions, then the keto might be a good match for you as well. Or if you're like in an off-season phase of fat loss or a reset period, not going into like peak competition prep, keto might be a good match for you as well. So to kind of recap, we've talked about a quick definition of keto, the pros of keto for CrossFit athletes, the cons of keto for CrossFit athletes. We talked about some subpopulations that might benefit from using it. And just to be clear, keto does have its benefits. We're talking about fat loss, energy stability, reduced inflammation for some. However, for performance-based glycolytic training modality CrossFit athletes who might be looking at chasing lifting or short benchmark workout PRs, this may not be the best match for you in terms of a fueling strategy. You may perform better with more carbs around your training. But it's good to talk to a knowledgeable coach or nutritionist on this topic if you need to do a little bit deeper dive about what would be right for you. So hopefully this has been helpful and informative for you guys. I thank you for the gift of your time and your attention. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to my dad's podcast. For more useful tools and guidance, go to CrossFitEdwardsville.com and feel free to like, share, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment sections down below. See you in the next episode.